explain how water crosses cell membranes, how we can make cerebrospinal fluid. Problems with cerebrospinal fluid are related to the development of hydrocephalus or brain edema, which killed our daughter. Aquaporins also explain how the interior of our eyes are filled with aqueous humor. The surface of our eyes coated by a thin film of tear. How we can make saliva. We can sweat. We can humidify our airways. We all are aware of how our kidneys can concentrate a large volume of urine to a small volume of concentrated final urine. And if you don't believe me, the next time you're on an airliner and your bladder is full and the seatbelt light says, remain seated, just think of aquaporin 2. So aquaporins also explain how water moves through plants, how they can take up water from the ground. So it was, to our surprise, people were very interested in this. It was considered a breakthrough. Again, it wasn't something we intended to do, but science can be very generous. And sometimes the most generous science comes from the unexpected. So this being the Nobel Week, I'd like to just tell a little story about that because I think it might be pertinent. No one ever said, this is a Nobel Prize, but there were a lot of clues that it was considered important. Now, one of the clues is that I was repeatedly invited to Sweden to give lectures. 9 years in a row, I was invited to give a special lecture in Stockholm. Different lectures. And I remember distinctly when I was invited to give a special lecture, the von Euler lecture at the Karolinska in Stockholm. Karolinska, of course, is the medical school that awards the Nobel Prize in Medicine. And I flew all night. And to save money, I flew in the cheapest seat, economy minus. Not Alitalia, it was SAS. Even worse. Anyway, in the morning, the plane arrives, and the business class gets out first, and they line up at the pass control. So businessmen, coats, neckties, the pass control officer would individually ask, the purpose of your visit to Sweden? Well, the businessmen all said, business. Stamp, next. And finally, it was my turn. I was exhausted, and my clothes were very shabby. My hair was all messed up. And the pass control officer looked at me and said, the purpose of your visit to Sweden? So I looked right at him and I said, I will present the Ulf von Euler lecture at the Karolinska Institute. The man looked up, he stared at me, he said, are you nervous? And so I looked back and said, yes, I'm a little nervous. And he pointed at me and says, you should be. I don't think he was part of the Nobel Committee. Anyway, several years later, early in October, the phone rang at 5:30 in the morning. It was a very serious voice. And the voice said, this is an important telephone call from Stockholm for Professor Peter Agri. Are you Professor Agri? And I said, I sure am. So they called to inform me that I would share the Nobel Prize in chemistry. I remember distinctly how bad I was as a student in chemistry. Should I tell the Nobel Committee that I got a D in chemistry? I thought it was a bad idea. I said, thank you. So my wife Mary is much cleverer than I am. And so she ran to her cell phone and called my mother. Dad had died 8 years before. Mother was living alone back in Minnesota, almost 80 years old. And Mary said that told her I would share the Nobel Prize in chemistry. And my mother, again, she's a farm girl, but she's very wise. Mothers are wise, I think, almost universally. And her words to Mary was, "Tell Peter that's very nice, but don't let it go to his head." Don't let it go to his head. I think a good Italian mother would say the same thing. So when I went to work that day, the young people were already celebrating, drinking bottles of champagne. And the most amazing thing is the university president came over to see me. I had no idea we were such close personal friends. And when I went to my office, the telephone line, the voicemail was jammed. There were requests from the New York Times, from the television. And then there was a very familiar voice, the voice of one of our colleagues from Norway. And I'll never forget, he said, with great excitement, he said, Peter, we've just heard the news. It's unbelievable." And then there's a pause. And then the voice came out, "Oh, no, it's believable. It's wonderful." And as I drove home that evening, life was sort of different. Now, our dog doesn't love me any more than before. And unfortunately, and very fortunately, my family still loves me. But there became a new chapter in my life because we've answered most of the scientific questions we decided we would answer. And of course, there are new opportunities in science. There always are. But I decided I would refocus my career first to try to share science with the public. We as scientists, we have hearts, we have feelings, we have emotions, and we have a fascination with the unknown. But I think we also have a responsibility to do something useful for society. And so I think to share our story with the public, with yourselves here at the community in Bergamo is a great opportunity. And I also try, when possible, to share this with our elected officials. Barack Obama has already asked me to serve as science advisor. I don't think John McCain is going to call. I think also we should do things that are useful in the laboratory. So our laboratory is now working on a very special problem, which is very tragic and very severe. And this is the problem of malaria. So malaria kills between 1 and 3 million children every year in Africa. In fact, almost 500 million people will get malaria next year. And the medicines for the treatment of malaria are becoming less effective. Drug resistance is emerging. So I became the director of a malaria institute at Johns Hopkins, and I spend part of my year in Zambia, where we have a malaria research institute affiliated with a missionary hospital, getting back to my original objective. And it's a wonderful experience. I think this is a great opportunity for young people to come to join us, to spend some time in Africa and really see that when we can improve the health of these people, they're happy. African children are all poor, but they don't have to be rich to be happy if we can get their health. And of course, in Africa, people are oftentimes poor because they're sick, and this is something we can help with. So that's really my story, and it's a simple story. I don't think I ever had any exceptional talent other than being a little rebellious, having maybe an eye for observation, a lot of good luck, and a tremendous wealth of friends, scientific colleagues who gave us ideas, who collaborated, who lifted this story, a simple story from a small laboratory in Baltimore. But I'd like to come back to the beginning of the story. And the beginning of the story involves the young people, because that's when I got interested in science. And I think it's so important that we give young people the opportunity to see science and do it with their own hands. We're blessed. We have 4 children. All are wonderful. One of them, Claire, in fact, taught in Milan for a year at the American school there. She taught science to small children. And she told me a wonderful story. Her students were 8 years old. So those of you who are young, think back when you're 8 years old. And the little boys, of course, wanted to play calcio. And so they would play calcio, and she would play with the girls. The girls would beat the boys when she was on their team. And then they did the science club. And she'd invented the science club and did little simple things to get the children to see where science affects things in our daily lives. She taught them about optics with magnifying glass. Pretty soon the little boys are using the magnifying glass to focus sunlight to burn the ants on the ground. But Miss Claire, it's science. Pretty soon the little boys are using the electrical circuits she developed to give each other electrical shocks. But Miss Claire, it's science. And it is science. 1,000 years ago, our progenitors mostly lived here in Europe. Mine lived up in Scandinavia, those of you who are Italian or from Italy. And 1,000 years ago, humans were just as intelligent as they are now, maybe more so. But they often suffered terribly from malnutrition, infectious diseases, hyperthermia, hypothermia. They died young. So what has changed the fortunes of humanity? It was really science. Science in terms of architecture, agricultural engineering, hygiene, medicine. And our work isn't over, but we have to engage the young people. And just as I call on the government leaders in the United States, I call on the government leaders here in Italy. Don't neglect your greatest investment, and the investment is in the young people. And so those of you who are parents who have young people, I have a special poem I'd like to share with you, sort of a blessing. And this is penned by the poet laureate of my generation, also from Minnesota. His name is Bob Dylan. You may know these words. So, young people, this is for you. May God bless and keep you always. May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others and let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars and climb on every rung. May you stay forever young. Thank you. My mother would say that's enough. You're very kind. Very kind. And I see Jean-Paul and Leonardo did not fall asleep. Thank you, boys. Is there some questions or what?
Grazie, è stata una bellissima.
We could sing the song again. I'll do it better this time.
Una bellissima narrazione, ha parlato di una vita nella scienza. Se ci sono delle domande, come al solito, alzate la mano e qualcuno verrà con un microfono.
Eternal light in the molecules, for me are very important. For you?
The eternal light.
The eternal light.
Yes.
The light